Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So last week we talked about the first noble truth, in which the Buddha went to great length to define the term dukkha, the experience of dukkha. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, grief, lamentation and despair is suffering. Association with the disliked and separation from the liked is suffering. In fact, the 5 focuses of the grasping mind associated with clinging and craving are suffering. So now we go on to the second noble truth, the noble truth of the origin of suffering. And in Nyanamoli's book on this, he begins with, you can see, Digha Nikaya 22. As you can see, it's there, D22. And we'll first go through Nyanatiloka's translation, and then we'll have a look at Bhante Sujato's translation. What now is the noble truth of the origin of suffering? It is craving which gives rise to fresh rebirth, and bound up with pleasure and lust, now here, now there, finds ever fresh delight. Now those of us in Adelaide wanting to hear Dhamma, very often our colleagues in the Tibetan tradition are the most available English Dhamma talks in this town, really. So many of us have spent hours listening to our dear Tibetan friends talking about attachment, and I believe that when they're talking about attachment, they're talking about the same sorts of qualities of mind as we in Theravada mean when we're talking about craving. And I think we're both speaking about these teachings here. The craving or attachment that is the cause of suffering. And what I'd like you to pay particular attention to here is that right from the outset, the Buddha's defining what particular types of craving or attachment. So not all craving or not all attachment is covered to this. So craving and attachment and clinging to the path is not something we need to abandon. It is these particular 3 types of craving, clinging, attachment, and hanging on to that we've got to let go of. So let's have a very closer look at what it is we're trying to let go of. You know, we hear all the great teachers saying letting go, let go, let go, let go of clinging, let go of attachment. So let's see what the Buddha's telling us to let go of. So let's go over this. What now is the noble truth of the origin of suffering? It is craving or attachment which gives rise to fresh rebirth. The craving which gives rise to fresh rebirth. The craving which is bound up with pleasure and lust. Now here, now there, finds ever fresh delight. So it is this craving which gives rise to rebirth, and bound up with pleasure and life, lust, now here, now there, finds ever fresh delight. How does Bhante Sujato express that? is the craving that leads to future rebirth, mixed up with relishing and greed, looking for enjoyment in various different realms. Okay, come back over here. So here we've got the sensual craving, the craving for eternal existence, and the craving for self-annihilation. So sensual craving is how Venerable Nyanatiloka translates kamha tanha. Craving for eternal existence is how he translates bhava tanha, and craving for self-annihilation is how he translates vibhava tanha. And let's look at how. And Ajahn Sujato says craving for sensual pleasures, craving for continued existence, and craving to end existence. But where does that craving arise and where does it settle? Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it is there that craving arises and settles. But where does this craving arise and take root? Wherever in the world there are delightful and pleasurable things, there this craving arises and takes root. Ear, eye, nose, tongue, body and mind are delightful and pleasurable. There this craving arises and takes root. This is, to my mind, I see this as the absolute genius of the Buddha. Most of us ordinary people, I don't know about normal, but we go, the cause of suffering is the unpleasant stuff, the things we don't like. That's what suffering is. But here the Buddha's like turning that right on the head. He's saying the cause of death, the cause of craving, where does it arise and take root? Where there are delightful and pleasurable things. Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it's there that craving arises and settles. And what in the world seems nice and pleasant? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. And we really like nice sights and nice sounds and smells and tastes and touches. Like, this is what we're attached to. This wanting those pleasant sensory inputs. We want pleasant thoughts. This is like the entertainment. This is why entertainment industry is so big, right? When we've all got food in our belly and roofs over our heads and clothes on our backs and some kind of love in our lives, where do we go for next? Well, we go for entertainment, don't we? And particularly if we're a bit short on the love in our lives. The less love, probably the more entertainment we need. There's these thoughts in the world that seem nice and pleasant, and it's there that craving arises and settles. These consciousnesses. So the knowing that we see, like we want to know that we saw that, we want to know that we heard that, we want to know. We're quite craving to know that, knowing of all these nice pleasant consciousnesses and these nice pleasant mental objects, their craving arises and settles. Contact. So you can actually see here that the beginning of the contact formula here. eye contact. Before we had the eye and the ear and the nose, the body part, and then the sight and the sound and the smell, the external stimulus, and then there's the knowing, consciousness, vijnanam, 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 the knowing of it, the knowing that eye has been contacted by the sight, the knowing that the ear has been contacted by the sound, the knowing that the tongue has been contacted by the taste. And when those things come together, there we go, contact. And when we have contact that seems nice and pleasant, craving arises and settles. And then, of course, the feeling, and we want nice feeling, and the perception of those thoughts, the perception of tastes and smells. Sometimes, the thought of a food, we like to think about our favourite food because thinking about our favourite food is pleasant, and so our perception of it. And sometimes our perception is slightly different to what's actually there, but we like to have it as we want to perceive it. We'll see what we want to see, and we'll hear what we want to hear. So then we've got the intentions. And this is interesting, that in fact, that in the very act of craving for sights and sounds, it seems, craving for thoughts seems nice and pleasant. And there, even more craving arises and settles. And ain't that a fact? We enjoy the thought, so we crave that enjoyment, and then we crave the thought that caused the enjoyment. So we hear the sound, we enjoy the sound, we crave the enjoyment of hearing the sound, and then we crave the sound. And then we have thoughts about sights and smells, and those, after we've craved we've got attachment to the pleasure of the sound, and then we've got attachment to the pleasure of the music that caused the pleasure of the sound. And now we're going to have thinking about that music, so we've got attachment to the thoughts about the music and the thoughts about the craving for the pleasure that happened way back there in contact. And we crave those thinking, that thoughts too. So we've got vitarka and vichara here, thoughts about taste, vichara, considerations about taste and sounds. So this whole process of attachment and craving gets added to in all these layers, right? Layer of attached to this and craving to that, and craving to the next layer, craving to the next layer. And this is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering. That was a lot more detailed than I expected it to be. Should we go through that sequence again? Because that's kind of interesting, isn't it? First of all, that all seemed to kind of sequence starting with attachment to sensual pleasures. one of the things that used to also, I could understand craving for existence, but I tried to work out craving to end existence. And I thought I'd just share with you a few ponderings I had on that. And then we'll go through that sequence again just to review it, because that's fascinating. But just a short pondering on craving to end existence. To me, that seems like we want to end the things that are not pleasant. We want the unpleasant sights to achieve non-existence. We want the unpleasant sounds to achieve non-existence. We want the unpleasant experiences to achieve non-existence. We want the unpleasant memories to achieve non-existence. In fact, we want them to go away. We want the painful touches to go away, the painful smells to go away, the painful thoughts to go away. That's how I understand craving for non-existence. We don't want to have what we don't want to have. And craving for existence, we do want to have what we do want to have, and we want to have it forever and ever and ever. I want to be me, and I want to be me having all the pleasures, and I want to be having it forever, for eternity. And I want to be me having all the pleasures for eternity, and that no unpleasures exist. I think deep down that's unreasonably and unrealistically what we all want. We don't want the body to hurt. We don't want people to disagree with us. We don't want them to have the thoughts that we don't want them to have. We want them to have the same opinion as us and the same belief as us, because that's pleasant, and we want things that are not pleasant to not exist. So, let's look at this noble truth of the origin of suffering. The craving that leads to future rebirth is mixed up with relishing and greed, looking for enjoyment in various different realms. And that is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for continued existence, and craving to end existence. But where does that craving arise, and where does it settle? Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it is there that craving arises and settles. This is so counterintuitive. You know, it seems to me that whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant should be the source of my happiness, not the source of my suffering. Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it is there that craving arises and settles. And what in the world seems nice and pleasant? The I in the world seems nice and pleasant, and it is there that craving arises and settles. The I, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind in the world seems nice and pleasant, and it is there that craving arises and settles. Yeah, I reckon I'm pretty attached to my eyes, and I'm pretty attached to my ears and capacity to hear, my eyes and my capacity to see. In fact, I'm really attached and clinging to my sense bases. I like having a tongue that can taste nice foods. I don't like having a tongue that can taste horrible foods. I don't like being able to smell horrible smells, but I definitely have craving for nice smells and nice sights. Here we go. Craving for sights and sounds and smells. I have the craving for the eyes and ears because I also have craving for the sights and sounds. And I have craving for knowing about those sights and sounds. I have craving for the contact where the sight and the sights come together with the eye and the knowing about it. I want that contact to happen. And then the pleasant feelings, or actually, sometimes it's not even pleasant feelings. Like sometimes it's like you're alive because you know the pain makes you alive. Not all kinds of pain, just some kinds of pain are a bit like that, And so although it might be kind of technically painful, on some levels it's pleasant. The stuff that gives you an adrenaline rush, So for example, a feeling born of body contact, Vedana, could be, say you're really working out and you're in the zone and you've really got a lot of joy and happiness going on because you're actually really in the zone. But you got some lactic acid burn, so technically there's some physical pain. But there's times when that hurts so good, it feels really good to have that burn. And it gives a lot of benefits, so that's a happy, unpleasant feeling. And we can get quite attached to them. We can get attached to unhappy, unpleasant feelings too. So then we have the perception. So now we're going into feeling, perception, intentions, craving for the actual sights and smells and tastes, craving for thoughts, craving for considerations, and this whole layer upon layer, all the way from the physical eye and wanting to have an eye, through to cravings the sights, enjoying the thoughts of a sight, and enjoying the feelings of the sights, and enjoying considering and pondering the sights. Interesting. So what else has he got to say? He's got going into dependent origination, and similarly here he talks about the karmic results of getting bound up with that craving, and truly due to sensuous craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, impelled by sensuous craving, and moved by sensuous craving. Kings fight with kings, princes with princes, priests with priests, citizens with citizens. The mother quarrels with the son with the mother, the father with the son with the father, brother with brother, brother with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend, sister with sister too. Government with government, country with country, and thus given to dissension, quarrelling and fighting. They fall upon each other with fists, sticks or weapons, and thereby they suffer death or deadly pain. And further, due to sensuous cravings, conditioned through sensuous cravings, impelled by sensuous cravings, entirely moved by sensuous cravings, people break into houses, rob, plunder, pillage whole houses, commit highway robbery, seduce the wives of others, and then the rulers have such people caught and inflict on them various forms of punishment, and thereby they incur death or deadly pain. Now this is the misery of sensuous craving, and the heaped up of suffering in this present life due to sensual craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, caused by sensuous craving, and entirely dependent on sensuous craving. So how does that apply to our lives? Because most of us aren't kings, but if we go back a little bit, we're all citizens, and we're all mothers or fathers or sons or daughters, or one or two of those, yeah? We're brothers and we're sisters. And so when we have these quarrels, and we do quarrel with each other, don't we? Well, not so much, but perhaps. So what's at the root of these quarrels here? It's craving. Craving for what? Well, that great list that we just went through. So, for example, if I'm attached to my opinion and my thinking and my considering and my pondering, and I crave for the pleasure of being right, am I more likely to quarrel than if I'm not particularly attached to my opinion, thinking, well, that's an opinion, but they can have a different opinion to me? So being attached to opinions certainly causes quarrels in the family, yeah? Being attached to ideologies, being attached to ideas like us and them, and being attached to roles and I'm the this, therefore, you're the that, therefore. These are all just ideas and concepts. And when we get attached to these, what happens? Citizens fight with citizens, mothers quarrels with sons, sons quarrel with mothers, fathers with sons, sons with fathers, brothers with brothers, and probably in all possible permutations, but that's enough to list for now. So what's the solution to not quarrelling here? Can we let go of our attachment to our thoughts, to our perceptions, our perception that we're right and they're wrong? Does it matter? Can we let go of that? Can you imagine if we didn't fight over things? How would that look? If we weren't attached to other people having to have the same opinion as us, or see the things the same way as us, or have the same understanding as us? What if the next time we find ourselves in a quarrel, instead of pushing them to let go of their opinion, how about for just a moment or two considering, what if I let go of my opinion? Well, that's got to be easier said than done, isn't it? But it's sure shortcut the quarrel, right? Doesn't mean to say you have to go all the way over to agreeing with them. But you can go to the neutral point of going, well, this is the opinion that I'm holding here, and that's the opinion they're holding there. Would it hurt me to listen to their opinion? I don't have to take it on. Why don't I just listen while they talk? And not arguing it with them, and just let them tell you their opinion. It doesn't mean to say you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean to say that you there just have to have their opinion. But in terms of a quarrel, I think it would help to shortcut things. Since the cause of the quarrels, according to the Buddha here, from Majjhima Nikaya 13, so you can see M13 at the side there, the cause being sensual pleasures. Should we have a quick look how Bhante Sujato says this? What was that? Longer discourse on the mass of suffering. So, I think it's down the bottom. Here we go. Here we are. So I think this is where that particular quote starts. For the sake of sensual pleasures, kings fight with kings, aristocrats fight with aristocrats, Brahmins fight with Brahmins, and householders fight with householder. Mother fights with child, child with mother, father with child, etc. And once they've started quarrelling, arguing and fighting, they attack each other with fists, stones, rods and swords, resulting in death and deadly pain. And this too is a drawback of sensual pleasures apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. And you might think that this seems a little extreme, that well, people we know wouldn't take a quarrel to fists and stones and rods and swords, resulting in death and deadly pain. But the statistics in Australia is that the highest cause of death for women in this country is not car crashes, but domestic assault. So clearly these quarrels and arguments are leading to death and deadly pain in a significant number of families here in Australia. Now, this is clearly a real thing. So this one goes on in some length at the drawbacks of sensual pleasures, because really it's just not obvious. Oh yes, and here this is the one where he lists out all the gruesome punishments that they had back in the day. Now then there's in the future, for the sake of sensual pleasures they conduct themselves badly by way of body, speech or mind. You know, that's really real. You can think of that in your own life, right? Why are the kids quarrelling? Because they want the toy, and they want to have the pleasure of the toy, or what have you, right? Or people go out and get intoxicated and then do silly things, and they're doing it, these things that cause them problems later for the sake of sensual pleasures. And when their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. And this is a drawback of sensual pleasures to do with lives to come. And it's a massive suffering caused by sensual pleasures. What is the escape from sensual pleasures? I think that might be next week's, isn't it? The third noble truth, giving up desire and greed for sensual pleasures. This is the escape from sensual pleasures. There are ascetics and Brahmins who don't truly understand sensual pleasures, gratification, drawback and escape in this way for what they are. It's impossible for them to completely understand sensual pleasures themselves or to instruct another, so that practicing accordingly they will completely understand sensual pleasures. So this is gratification, danger and escape. So the gratification in sensual pleasures is obvious. There's the pleasurable pleasure. And then the danger is all these other things that causing quarrels, having a bad rebirth. And the escape, of course, is the removing and giving up of desire and greed for sensual pleasures. This is the escape. So it goes through that. A lot of karma. Yeah. I don't really want to go into karma today too much. I think what we've gone through tonight, looking at sensual craving, is sufficient for one, because there's a lot to think about there. So it is, however, if we go back to the beginning of this, I just want to go to something else, reiterate something. The craving that gives rise to fresh rebirth. So for example, the pondering and considering of Dhamma and clinging to the pondering of and consideration of Dhamma and the pleasant feeling that arises for that is not a type of craving that leads to fresh rebirth. Therefore, that's not a kind that needs to be abandoned. Really, it's the kinds that give rise to fresh rebirth that we need to really look at and work with letting go of. So don't let go of your joy in the practice. Don't let go of your joy in the Dhamma. Need to hold on to those things and, cling tight. When we get to Nibbana, that's when clinging to that will fall away, because you don't need to cling to the path anymore once you get to the destination. But what we want to let go of clinging to is sensual craving, kama tanha, craving for existence, bhava tanha, and craving for non-existence, vibhava tanha. Now I'm getting very dry now. I forgot to bring a drink in, and so I'm going to wrap up a little bit early tonight. I hope you don't mind. I didn't log into YouTube myself tonight, so I can't see the texts. So I might just end with closing refuge. I don't know whether you can hear it, but my neighbours are having a very happy party. They sound like they're really enjoying themselves, which is great. But the music's distracting me and taking my train of thought. I probably should be better than that, but there you go. I'm not. Okay. Well, thank you for listening in tonight. And next week we should look at the third noble truth, which is the noble truth of the ending of suffering. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you.